Okay, I think it's time we talk about this. I have received many a comment on my What If Axel is in the Zero Era video, which check that out if you haven't yet, by the way, where people were either trying to confirm or debunk whether Axel is actually canon to the main Mega Man timeline. I actually found this conversation quite interesting, so I wanted to make this video. This is not meant to either debunk or claim that one interpretation of the timeline is correct. While Capcom does have their statements on what they believe is canon, there is a lot of room for interpretation here, so I just wanted to kind of explain everyone's takes on the timeline and my own personal take. So there are actually a lot of unclear things in the Mega Man timeline, like where exactly do the Game Boy games and Wily Wars take place, or when does Super Adventure Rockman take place? Yes, Keiji Inafune did say that it was non-canon, but the Robot Master Field Guide does reference that game in Shadow Man's bio, so is it canon? There's other external medias that treat it as if it was, so we don't really know. But the main point of confusion all stems from Mega Man X6. Don't worry, we'll get to him. He's not where things start. For those who don't know, X5 was actually meant to be the end of the X series, and was going to lead straight into Mega Man Zero, until Capcom started making X6 without Inafune's knowledge, so he had to scrap together the Zero ending for that game, essentially to give an excuse as to why Zero was sealed away in the first Zero game. But even then, X7 came out with Zero not being sealed away, and they introduced a new character, Axel, who joins the main group, even though he is never referenced in the Zero games. But hey, don't worry, in X8, where their designs are slowly transitioning to the Mega Man Zero designs, Axel's hit in the head by Lumine and seemingly is killed off, or something. That could explain it. Then the Mega Man ZX series happens, where they introduce biometals, which are essentially like these rocks that have recreations of the heroes inside of them. But they're from the Zero games, and they're just X-Zero and the Four Guardians, so no problem there. Okay, what the hell, guys? That's clearly Axel. So ZX Advent introduces Model A, which in-game is stated to be Model Albert, and the devs have also stated isn't actually Axel, though they did also put a reference to Axel with that cap in the middle of Model A to represent something that they had to put on Axel in order to keep Lumine at bay. So which is it? Is he Axel or is he not? Because of these inconsistencies, it has caused fans to debate on what the actual timeline looks like. While Capcom seemingly wants us to believe that all of the games connect to each other, so going from X6 to X7 and X8, then to Mega Man Zero, fans have actually speculated that there are two distinct timelines. The other timeline being with all of the games that Axel is specifically in, that being X7, X8, and Command Mission, giving us the split timeline theory, where going from X's ending we go to the events of X7, X8, and Command Mission, where Zero doesn't seal himself away. The other timeline being where Zero does seal himself away, which goes to the events of the Zero games and the rest of the Robot timeline. And we know for a fact that Command Mission cannot take place in the same timeline that the Zero games do, because it happens 100 years after the X series, which is when the Zero series takes place in 22XX. They cannot coexist. But then we have the Mega Man ZX games, which also have their own distinct timelines, whether Vent or Ale are the ones who get Model Z and Model X. And this does actually change things, so could it be that both the split timelines eventually lead to ZX, and it's just the different variations of that timeline? And then to make things even more confusing, we have issue 55 of the Mega Man Archie Comics. And yes, the Archie Comics are their own canon, but this issue specifically is just Dr. Light seeing events of the future, which are just the events of the games. So while it is its own canon, I think it should still be considered when having this discussion. Which not only do we see Axel alongside the rest of the hunters that show that he is canon to this version of events, but we get this page here depicting Axel fighting alongside X and Zero in the Elf Wars, an event that we never actually got to see in any game, so at least in this version of events, Axel was canon in the timeline of the Zero games. My only guess is that he died during this battle, which, while it would be very tragic, it would be a very epic end to his character, especially if it was him fighting Omega. And we also have a page showing all of the ZX characters, so does this necessarily mean that Axel in this universe is Model A? No, but the connection could still be made. You wanna know what's even worse? This thing doesn't make it any easier. The Maverick Hunter Field Guide is meant to not only give you all the lore about all of the various Mavericks and Maverick Hunters, but it also delves into the events of the X timeline as a whole, trying to put them all neatly together. And this book says that Command Mission is canon. This paragraph here referencing the events of X8, Data missing because, well, we don't know what happened directly after that. And then this is about Command Mission. So it treats it as canon, and it does the same for both X and Zero. After the events of X8, it mentions Command Mission as if it was actually canon, but something interesting with Zero's bio in this book, it never mentions him sealing himself away. So that could be evidence that this is saying there's a split timeline. One where the events of X8 leads to Command Mission, and then another where Zero seals himself away and it goes into the Zero games. Or at least I'd want to agree with that, if this wasn't at the back of the book. As you can see here, Advanced Reploid Body Theoretical and Reploid Cyberspace Manifestation Theoretical. These are clearly Zero's design in, well, Zero and Cyber Elf. So, what does this mean? Could the theoretical mean that in the timeline of Command Mission, these are designs that are being thought of but just don't happen? Or is the theoretical trying to say that these eventually come about, even though this acts like Command Mission is canon? I don't know. This doesn't help at all. In conclusion, things are kind of all over the place, aren't they? I mean, ultimately, it is what it is. They're probably going to say that X7 and X8 are directly connected to the Zero games just to make things easier. And that's personally my belief. I believe that it goes X6, X7, X8, then the Elf Wars and the Zero games, like how the Archie Comics depict it. But that is just my opinion. I do know that there is plenty of evidence to support the split timeline theory, and if you personally believe that, then hey, more power to you. Though I do like to believe that Model A is Axel. I mean, look, Albert was a freaking narcissist. Of course he would say that it stands for Model Albert, even if he based it off of Axel's schematics, wherever he got them from. But again, that is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments what your interpretation of the Mega Man timeline is, and I'll see you all next time.